Hey everyone, welcome to the journey into insight. I think the greatest war in human history is happening right now, and almost every person on Earth is part of it. Yet, 99% don't even realize it's happening. A war with no bullets, a war with no borders, a war that doesn't take lives. It takes meaning. And the most shocking part? This war isn't being fought against governments or nations or ideologies. This war is being fought against God himself. Not by evil people, not by some secret organization, but by ordinary humans, without even knowing what they're doing. If that sounds impossible, stay with me. Because once you understand how this war works, you'll start seeing its signs everywhere. In society, in culture, in technology, in politics, and even inside your own thoughts. So the question is simple, but uncomfortable. Is there a real war against God happening right now? Not a physical war, not a war declared on paper, but a war of meaning, a war on purpose. A war against the very idea that there is someone above us, someone beyond us. Someone who sets the rules of right and wrong, good and evil. For thousands of years, humans disagreed on many things: politics, tribes, nations, power. But almost all civilizations agreed on one thing: there is something higher than man, a god or gods, or a moral order, or a higher reality. But something changed in the last few decades. Slowly, quietly, and cleverly, a new worldview began spreading. The idea that man should be the center of everything, that there is no higher authority, that the universe is empty of purpose, that life is just physical reactions, that morality is just personal preference, that humans should answer only to themselves, and once this idea takes root, all other beliefs start to fall like dominoes. Responsibility becomes optional. Accountability disappears. Right and wrong become relative. Meaning becomes personal. Truth becomes whatever we want it to be. And God? God becomes unnecessary, unwanted, and eventually unwelcome. This is where the war begins. Not with hatred, but with indifference. Not with arguments, but with distractions. Not with logic, but with comfort. Because when people become too comfortable, they begin to push away anything that challenges their lifestyle, including God. If you ask someone today why they don't believe in God, the answer is rarely philosophical. It is rarely scientific. It is rarely logical. Most people don't reject God because they found evidence against him. They reject God because accepting him would require responsibility. It would require effort. It would require change. And modern society is built on convenience, not responsibility. Think about it. Almost every system today encourages a life where God becomes irrelevant. Technology gives us the illusion that we are in total control. Social media gives us the illusion that our opinions are the ultimate truth. Consumer culture teaches us to chase pleasure endlessly. Entertainment is designed to keep our minds busy, so we never stop and think. We have become a society that distracts itself from its own soul. This is not accidental. It is systematic, and it is global. That's why many thinkers, philosophers, and even non-religious scholars argue that modern society is fighting a subtle war against the idea of God. Not because people hate God, but because the idea of God interferes with the lifestyle modern society wants to promote. Let's take a real-life example. The idea that everything is acceptable as long as it makes you happy is one of the strongest modern ideologies. But this is a direct attack on the concept of God, because every religion teaches that humans must balance personal desires with moral boundaries. Modern culture says the opposite. Moral boundaries restrict you, God limits you, religion controls you. So the easiest way to remove limits is to remove God from the equation. Another example: the obsession with self-made identity. Society keeps telling us, you are your own creator. You define yourself. You decide your truth. You decide your purpose. You are the center of the universe. This language sounds empowering, but it slowly replaces God with the self. It turns humans into their own gods. It gives them the authority to determine right and wrong based on feelings. But feelings are unstable, inconsistent, and easily manipulated. That's why life feels more confused than ever. When everything is subjective, nothing is meaningful. Take the rise of extreme individualism. People seek freedom but end up lonely. They reject religion to avoid judgment, but end up judging themselves even harsher. Depression rises, anxiety rises, suicide rates rise. People achieve more material comfort than any previous generation, yet feel more empty inside. Why? Because humans were never designed to live without meaning, and when you remove God, meaning collapses. The war against God becomes visible in small things first. Schools remove any mention of God in the name of neutrality, but neutrality is never neutral. It always teaches something. When you remove God, you are indirectly teaching that God is unnecessary. Media mocks religion casually, but praises anything that promotes moral relativism. Films and shows portray religious people as backward or irrational, while portraying those with no beliefs as free thinkers. These patterns shape the mind subconsciously. Even language changes. We stop saying, "Thank God," and start saying, "I am lucky," or "The universe helped me," as if the universe is a vending machine. People replace God with energy, luck, astrology, or manifestation because these alternatives demand no discipline, no responsibility, no moral structure. They give comfort without commitment. And this is where the war becomes serious, when people begin replacing God with man-made philosophies. Not because these philosophies are logical, but because they are convenient. This war is not fought with arguments. It is fought with comfort, pleasure, entertainment, and ego. It is a war fought by making people so distracted in their daily lives that they never stop to ask, "Why am I here? Where did I come from? What happens after death? Does my life have meaning?" These questions are dangerous for modern society because they lead toward God. And so, society keeps people busy enough to avoid these questions. But here's the surprising twist. Many of the world's most influential thinkers, atheists, and philosophers have deeply struggled with the idea of rejecting God. Albert Camus, one of the most famous atheists, openly admitted that the idea of a meaningless universe terrifies the human soul. Friedrich Nietzsche, who declared, "God is dead," later warned that removing God would lead to chaos, moral collapse, and psychological destruction. Exactly what we are witnessing today. Even Jean-Paul Sartre, the father of existentialism, said later in life that a world without God leads people to despair. Why would these highly intelligent people say such things? Because they understood something most people overlook. Once you remove God, everything becomes unstable. Truth becomes unstable, morality becomes unstable, purpose becomes unstable, human identity becomes unstable, society becomes unstable. And that instability creates a vacuum, a psychological emptiness that people try to fill with money, pleasure, fame, politics, nationalism, ideology, relationships, or personal achievements. But none of these things fill the vacuum. They only distract from it temporarily. Let's talk about science. Many people think science has replaced the need for God. But the more we learn scientifically, the more complicated the universe becomes. The fine-tuning of physical constants, the complexity of DNA, the structure of consciousness, these raise more questions than answers. Leading scientists like Paul Davies, Francis Collins, and even agnostic physicists argue that the universe appears designed, purposeful, and finely balanced. This is not religion speaking, it is observation. But the war against God pushes people to ignore these facts. Instead of asking, "Who designed this?" society says, "Don't think about it, just enjoy your life." The war becomes even more visible when you look at the rise of AI. AI is the closest humanity has ever come to creating something that imitates human intelligence. And suddenly, humans feel powerful, as if they are becoming creators. Some people already talk about AI replacing religion, becoming a godlike decision-maker. But here's the irony. AI is created from data, algorithms, and electricity, all of which come from a universe created by laws humans cannot explain. The war against God is not about disproving God. It is about replacing him with science, with technology, with pleasure, with ego, with self-worship. But the replacements do not satisfy the human soul. Let me give you one real-world example. The United States, Europe, Japan, South Korea, countries that became highly developed, are facing a crisis of meaning. Their birth rates are collapsing. Loneliness is at record levels. Suicide rates are rising. Antidepressant consumption is skyrocketing. These are societies that marginalized religion in the name of progress. But progress without purpose leads to emotional bankruptcy. Another example. Prisons around the world have shown that when inmates rediscover faith, any faith, their behavior changes dramatically. Crime decreases, violence decreases, addiction decreases. Why? Because faith gives structure, accountability, and hope, things modern society has removed. Now let's return to the question, is there a real war against God? Yes, but not in the way people imagine. It is not a war fought by armies, it is a war fought by ideas. A war fought by convincing people that God is irrelevant, inconvenient, or outdated. A war fought by making human desire the highest authority. A war fought by distracting people so they never think about their soul. A war fought by replacing God with self. And the result is clear. People have more freedom, but feel more trapped. More pleasure, but less happiness. More information, but less wisdom. More connections, but more loneliness. More technology, but less meaning. The war against God is not destroying religion. It is destroying the human soul. But here is the powerful truth. The war against God is ultimately a war humanity cannot win, because humans did not create themselves. Humans cannot escape the built-in longing for meaning, purpose, and transcendence. Even the most atheistic societies eventually rediscover the need for something higher. Because without God, nothing makes sense. Not morality, not consciousness, not the universe, not our existence. The real war is not humans against God. It is humans against their own conscience. Humans against their own inner emptiness. Humans trying to silence the voice inside that whispers, "There is something greater than you." And no matter how loud the world becomes, that voice never fully disappears. If you look closely at history, every time humanity tried to remove God, darkness followed. When people worship human power instead of divine guidance, corruption spreads. When people worship pleasure, families collapse. When people worship the self, society fractures. When people worship science without ethics, atrocities happen. The 20th century proved this with brutal clarity. But when society remembers God truly, sincerely beyond rituals, human life transforms. Justice becomes meaningful, morality becomes stable, purpose becomes clear, community becomes strong, responsibility becomes natural, and the soul finds peace. The war against God is real, but it is also temporary, because truth cannot be erased, only ignored, and eventually every human being reaches a moment, sometimes in joy, sometimes in pain, where they feel an undeniable truth. We are not alone. We are not self-created. We are not meaningless. We are not gods. And once that realization enters the heart, even quietly, the war ends. Because the war was never about God losing his place. It was about humans losing themselves.